Welcome back to Roompact's ResEdChat podcast, a platform to showcase people doing great work and talk about hot topics in residence life and college student housing. So, my name is Noah Montague, and I use he, him, his pronouns. And today I'm going to be your host. If you've been listening or watching my episodes for a while, you know that I like to say that I am a storyteller at heart, and the stories that I choose to tell are ones that center the student and the college student experience, which makes me all the more excited, as always, about today's topic. So, today we're going to be talking about supervision and things to consider when supporting, advocating for, and of course, supervising student staff in our residence halls. Student staff, which I'll likely be referring to as RAs in this video, as that's my acronym of choice for sure, are all coming into the role for different reasons. They have different priorities, different ideas, different goals within the job. So, how can we best supervise them as residence life professionals? How do we hold them accountable while also being understanding and supportive? How do we be the supervisors that they need us to be? So, these are important questions for every residence life professional to be considering, and some of the questions that we're going to be talking about today as well. So, with that, I'm going to let my guest introduce herself to you all today.
Well, thank you so much. My name is Siobhàn Anderson-Judkins. For those of you who are listening, do not worry if you mispronounce my name. It's from Scotland. Everyone does. I am an assistant director of residence life at Vermont State University in the obviously gorgeous state of Vermont. I have been in higher education for just over 8 years now, with 5 years specifically with Res Life. But throughout all of my experience, I've been supervising student staff, specifically also with leadership students. So like, student government, resident assistants, or
Yeah.
RAs. I use the um,
Hmm.
same way, so perfect. I'll use RA too. And also like public safety student staff.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you, Siobhan, for being here. But to kind of get us started in thinking about this idea and talking about supervision, thinking about your specific supervision style, how would you define effective student staff supervision?
Well, one thing I have always thought of throughout both my higher education and also just my own education is that staff at a university, we are educators.
Yeah.
People might not necessarily think of that, oh, you type on a computer, you put students into a certain room. That's not educating. We do so much of that between, life skills, life management. And I think for students in particular, or for our student staff, it's really important for us to be an educator.
Hmm.
And I kind of like to describe myself as both a coach and a teacher. It's very much my goal is to promote my students and make them the best possible individuals they can be. And typically, when you have student staff, you only have them for, 1 to 2, maybe 3 years if you're
Yeah.
lucky.
If you're
So
lucky.
if you're lucky, I had three RAs just graduate who are all 3 year RAs, and I don't know what I'm gonna do. And I keep asking them, do you have to graduate? Can you come back one more year?
Hmm.
No, nope, they graduated. So yeah, just being able to find your way to be an educator, and what does that really mean? Maybe it's something in the moment, maybe it's something specifically with Res Life. Oh, your bulletin board, Noah, isn't that great. How can we
Yeah.
produce your bulletin board to be more effective for your residents? Or in other cases, it's, hey, I've noticed you're struggling in one of your academic courses. What do you need? How can I help you? Do you know how to get academic support? Do you know what academic support is? So really just having a plethora of knowledge and all this like big, vast information and being able to pinpoint exactly what your RA needs in the moment,
Yeah.
which is not easy. That's why also I wanted to
No.
talk about this. This is a very hard task.
Hmm. And it kind of has to be. And in the sense that I mentioned already, like every single RA coming into this role is looking for something different out of it. So our responsibility then becomes figuring out what that is,
Mhm.
to how to support them and what they need as an individual and what their goal in the role is. For some RAs, it's going to be the paycheck. And for some, it might be wanting to support students. Some, it might be want to develop. Some, it might be wanting to go into the field. So thinking about all of those things is something I think about a lot. But something that you mentioned particularly is this idea of residence life staff as educators. And that's something that I think I want to follow up on and go a little bit deeper into because that's something that I hold so deeply, both in that when I'm talking to my family and trying to explain what my job is, saying educator or teacher is usually the easiest way to explain it. But I think the point that you're making in we need to be educators and think about ourselves in that way, and that our RAs are looking to learn and looking to understand and looking to be able to navigate the role and navigate the university. And something else that you said about like being able to guide them to the places and being able to answer their questions, that is education. And that is being an educator. So I really love that answer. I think for me, effective student staff supervision shows up when my staff come to me to tell me they made a mistake.
Yes.
That I don't have to figure it out. But when a staff member comes to me and is like, hey Noah, I messed up. How can we fix this? That is okay, I've created a space where this human trusts me enough to
Mm,
tell me they made a mistake, and they trust me as an educator to help them fix it.
oh,
And getting to that point is a million steps and building trust and talking and creating that relationship. But that's what effective staff supervision looks like to me in practice.
absolutely. And when I remember when I first started in Res Life, even like not necessarily like the coming up to me, Siobhàn, I messed up. Can you help me?
Yeah.
The other end, when the student comes up to you with exciting news, and
Yeah.
I will never forget this moment. I know it's a bit of an off topic, but this is one
No,
of my favorite
please.
success stories. It was late April, my first year in Res Life. I moved to a new institution. I was at a new place. It still felt like I was learning my way. And I was in the dining hall, and of course, like it's the end of April, commencement's coming up, students are moving out, everything's going crazy. And one of my RAs saw me across the dining hall and ran up to me going, Siobhàn, Siobhàn, Siobhàn. And my brain's going, what happened?
What
What
happened?
happened?
What happened?
They were on duty last night. I
Mm-hmm.
also have the public safety background, so my brain is going crisis.
Yeah.
They were like, I got the job. And
Ah,
I almost dropped my food because they were so excited to come up and tell me that they got a job for after their graduation.
yeah.
And all I could do was like, I put my food down, I gave them this big hug, and I was like, oh my gosh, congratulations. And then we talked for like 10 minutes during my 30-minute lunch that I had and
Mm-hmm.
everything. And at the moment, as I was walking back to my office, all of that stress I had just disappeared. I was like, this is why I do what I do.
Yeah.
And I remember going and telling my colleagues, like, you guys aren't going to believe that they came up to me and they told me this. And they were like, oh. And I didn't know at the time my office had this little tradition of like the first big thing that happened with us. So someone wrote it down as that was
Oh, that's so sweet.
my first big thing was that a student came to me, and I also realized that I became that staff member that they
Yeah.
needed. And that to me is also a huge definition of success when they're so excited to tell you
I
something.
love that so much. And I could share, I'm very privileged to be able to share several things with that too. But I think thinking about that, because what we're talking about is trust and
Mm.
building trust with our staff and creating that environment where they feel like they can come to us for the good things and the bad things. But how do you establish that trust with your student staff?
That is a great question because you could say all things like, oh, just come talk to me, but that doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah.
For me, that really comes to like the RA one-on-one.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I would love to promote for this podcast is really spending time planning your first one-on-one with your RAs.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is don't talk about res life.
Mm-hmm.
For I know every institution is slightly different, but for generally, you just went through 2 or 3 weeks of RA training. They know their job, they know their expectations, they know their residents, and if there's something going on, you're going to already know about it.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Siobhàn and Noah are roommates, and they are really not getting along, and I don't know how to help them.
Mm-hmm.
You already know about that. They're not going to wait until you're one-on-one. So what I really like to do is make that moment about the RA. Ask them, sure, you're going to know their major, but ask them things of like, what are they interested in? Make kind of as you went back, every RA has their own different reasons. Like, hey, you already have the job. You don't need to, butter it.
Yeah.
really an RA? Like,
Hmm.
off the record. And learning things about their interests, their motivations, why they took this particular major, um, and you really start to get to know your RA and kind of making those little connections. One great example I had was one of my RAs in their first one, their phone went off and it was a Has Been Hotel song was their ringtone. I love that show, so I started
Yep.
like, singing the songs, and they were like, "Really? You're into this?" And it's just become a little thing. Like, didn't necessarily blossom into a friendship, and you don't necessarily want to be friends with your RAs. You want to have that professional boundary.
Hmm.
But it was enough to where when the second series, or sorry, season came out, we were able to make kind of rebuild that connection.
Yeah.
Like, oh, are you ready? I can't wait. And it was right before an academic break, so my RA's like, I haven't watched it. I've been focusing. Wait till after break and we'll talk about it.
Hmm.
Um, so I really like to do kind of with my first one-on-ones is my main goal is to just get to know the RAs on a one-on-one basis, kind of learn what things they're interested in, see how I can kind of make those small connections or even major ones. And then I ask them, what is your goal for the semester for the academic year? And I give my RAs a warning this in training. I'm like,
Yeah.
hey, at your first meeting, I'm going to ask you a goal and I'm going to
Hmm.
help them develop it into that SMART goal framework, specific, measurable, um, oh my goodness, the A, achievable, realistic,
Mm-hmm.
timely, that sort
I'm
of
glad
thing.
you remembered because I was not going to get to that A.
Oh, well, I think there's like three or four A's, but that's
Eh,
the one I already know is achievable. And we kind of talk about it and we work on developing it. And I don't make it about necessarily about res life. I have
yeah.
some RAs who are like, you know what, my programming wasn't strong last year. I really want to I want at some point every resident to go to one of my programmings this year. Great goal. Let's work on it. Some are, I just want to pass to get my degree. Some
Yep.
are, I have one already who's like, I want to learn how to drive a car. I've never driven before. I'm like,
Yeah.
perfect. Let's do that as your goal. So even though it had nothing to do with their academics or res life, it's what they wanted and needed in the moment
Yeah.
and helping them kind of build. And then throughout the semester and school year, I will pull up, especially if it's a quieter time. Like, we don't need to do a lot with there's not really RA selection right now. It's not during a high stress time. Hey Noah, how's your goal? Were you able to get
Yeah.
in driving practice last week?
Hmm.
And that in itself, just you bringing it up without them kind of expecting you to, shows that you care and shows that you're
Yeah.
also interested. Again, with
Hmm.
that experience, I had nothing to do with it. I wasn't going to sit in the car with them personally. My university doesn't allow us to be in the car unless through our school vehicle. So, and they couldn't drive the school vehicles without a license, but I was still able to kind of follow up with them,
Hmm.
give them practice, especially in Vermont driving in snow, being like, hey, I know we got a lot going on right now. It's near the end of the semester. Can you get into your car and practice just driving in snow? Because as soon as you brake, your car is going to go wild. I want you to know what it is in a safe environment. Like this parking lot's empty during this time. Go practice snow driving.
Yeah.
And that really shows that one-on-one
Hmm.
interest and that you want them to succeed, even though it has nothing to do with your job.
Yeah.
Sorry, I feel like I keep going on a bit of a rant, but
No, 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 no. It's making me think about a lot of things too, because it's like I also use my one-on-ones very purposely with my staff and thinking about I want this space to be for you and to be your space to talk to me about what you want to. So I think about and building that trust for me comes in that listening to them, in following up when they tell me something and
Mhm.
having those honest conversations. I had one RA this last year who family was probably the most important thing to him. And he would talk about family in every single one of our meetings, and he would give me updates on his brother, on his sister, on his mom, on his dad, on his grandmother. And I had hired him from being my student last year into this year. And when he got hired in my very first one on one with him, I asked him about his grandma because he had told me his grandma was sick the year before and I wanted to follow up and check on him. And I watched that mean the world to this human being in real time of wow, Noah remembered this thing about me. This is someone who actually cares about me coming into this role. And we'd probably spend about half of every one-on-one just getting the updates on his family and going through everyone. And if he forgot somebody, I'd ask, okay, but what about your brother? Like, is he still abroad? Like, what's going on there? And I watched it's such a unique role that we get to have with them because we watch our actions mean something in real time. And
Absolutely.
whether it be their face, whether it be the oh, or whether it be the both meaningful but upsetting sentence, like this is the first time I felt like a staff member cared about me, like that. The meaningful sentence, but also that's devastating to hear
Mm,
that.
yeah.
Uh,
Oh,
but I think that for me, asking those questions and building that connection comes really just from that baseline listening and making the time to show them that we care and that we want to be there. Because it is, to your own point, one thing to be like, come to me if you need anything. And it's another to be like, oh yeah, like how is this thing going that you told me about last week? And that matters to them and it builds that trust and it then makes them come to us with more of those things. It makes them
absolutely.
want to talk to us when we do that.
I know some people, if you're listening and you're thinking, I have so much going on, how am I supposed to remember those little
Yeah.
things? One thing I love to do is I have a notebook that is
Mm-hmm.
strictly for my one-on-ones. After every meeting, I'm jotting down notes. So I might be like, oh, I remember Noah mentioning his grandmother
Mm-hmm.
and coming back in the fall. I'm gonna put that down so I
I'm gonna
remember.
remember that. Mm-hmm.
And you, as you said, you do see that, and it is it is very disappointing at the same time when
Yeah.
it's for the RA, it's that first time.
Mm-hmm.
I even tried doing that with my general students. Now it is impossible to know every student's
It's
name,
impossible.
but if you can remember even a few just when you're in the hallway and saying, "Oh, hi Noah, how are you doing?" Or especially when you have a situation where a student maybe shared that their grandmother
Yeah.
wasn't doing well and you could bring it up later, it just
Mm-hmm.
helps so much. And then also maybe encourages them to want to become
Yeah.
RAs and we can do
Mm-hmm.
more personal connections.
Yeah. I have on occasion, and this is something I started doing this year just to help me with that memory piece, because when we have hundreds of students, deviating from the RA part for a second, thinking about student support in general, we're not going to remember everything just because we have so many, and sometimes with RAs as well. Like I have colleagues who have 30 RAs, and that's a different conversation than my 12. So thinking about that a little bit, but I will, after a meeting with a student, I might schedule send an email from a week later or for a week later
Oh,
to be like,
smart.
hey, like I know you talked about this thing like last week, even though I was sending it that day, but hey, like you talked about this today. I wanted to follow up. I hope you're doing well. And that has been a really cool practice for me this year. I've only done it a couple times, but there was a student who mentioned he was really struggling on a test and I wanted to check in on how it went. He told me when it was going to be, so I schedule sent it for later the afternoon after it to follow up on him. And then we actually had another one-on-one a couple weeks later. And that was maybe a weird little thing, but it helped in that space as well.
It's honestly so smart. One of my tricks, I know we're supposed to be talking about RA specifically. We have the student mail comes to my office and students will come and be like, hey, I got a letter saying they need or an email saying they need to pick up my mail.
Yeah.
And I don't remember the student's name because I was like, can you remind me of your last name?
Yep.
And then I'm going through, I'm like, unless it's Smith or something, I can be like, oh, Noah, here you go.
Yep.
Sorry, it's just when you're on a first name basis and
Hmm.
some students have picked up that, maybe I'm kind of fudging a little bit, but in general, like just being able to say like, oh, yes, here you go.
Yeah,
And then now and then it's, like, I'm sorry, can you just remind me of your first name? And just own it when you can,
for
but
sure.
those little tricks, I might steal your idea of the email though.
Give it
Just
a go. It worked pretty well for me. Um,
I'll try it
And
out.
yeah, no, I liked it a lot and I watched it matter to the point that we keep making. I watched that outreach matter. And then it helped me then remember the conversation later to be like, oh, now they're responding to this email. I now am remembering what we talked about, even though the student isn't in front of me right now. But
Absolutely.
I think getting us a little back into thinking about supervision and going into that space, we're talking a lot about RAs, and that's the main part of this conversation. But briefly, thinking about what makes supervising student staff different than full-time staff for you.
Absolutely. So I'm very fortunate in my job that I get to supervise both professional staff
Hmm.
and student staff. And kind of as you were saying earlier, RAs come in for different reasons. Some might want to be interested in going into higher education and stay.
Hmm.
My personal experience, all of my students are in STEM. They're in engineering, they're in
Yeah.
architectural, they're in nursing, they're in veterinary technology. Typically, my students come in, they get a 2-year degree, and then they go out in the field.
Yep.
That's their point. And for my students who are become RAs, it's typically that the housing is a very expensive part. If I can get
Hmm.
my housing for free, that's going to help me get to my goals faster. My students are
Yeah.
typically, career focused.
Hmm.
Whereas my professional staff tend to be more the career. So when I'm thinking of my professional staff, I'm thinking of, what's your 1-year plan, what's your 5-year plan, what's your 10-year plan, and I'm thinking longevity. With
Hmm.
my students, I think it's a bit more kind of in the moment. One, in general, my students are in the Gen Z. Sorry, I'm from the UK. I'm trying to use American terms. Are in Gen Z, and typically, a lot of times, especially just in general for kids that are students that are in college, they're kind of thinking in the moment now, not necessarily everything. So I try to focus on kind of what's going on with the classes, with the res life, and not necessarily the future down the line. Because as I said,
Yeah.
we're fortunate if we get RAs for 3 years. Um, so I think of everything kind of more a bit short term. And then also going back to that educator piece, I'm an academic advisor
Yeah.
unofficially. I'm a life skills develop coach unofficially. I'm a mental health counselor, uncredited, unlicensed.
We all
Um,
are.
we all are, and you're kind of really more thinking of holistic care of a student.
Yeah.
Um, I also like to think of things of, that joke that nurses and physicians are the worst patients because they won't go to the doctors themselves when
Yep.
they're educators. We're the same way when it comes to like providing resources. My
For
RAs,
sure.
during RA training, I pull in as many departments as I can, and they always give them like a wad of resources that the RAs are sharing with students. They don't want to go get it themselves. They
Yeah.
will be the first to say to their resident, hey, if you're struggling, I can walk you to the tutoring center and help you get connected with someone from tutoring. Then they'll sit with my one-on-ones in my office and go, yeah, I'm really struggling in this class and I don't know what to do. Oh, have you gone to tutoring? No.
Hmm.
And I'm the one walking them down to the tutoring center.
Yeah.
Um, and I find that hilarious, but also I do it myself. I tell everyone, ask for help if you need it, but then I'm not going to ask for help when I need it.
Yep.
So I feel like that's kind of the main thing when you're thinking of student staff, especially if you're going in for the first time supervising. Don't go in too much about the big outcomes at the end.
Yeah.
Focus a bit more on like today, the next week, and maybe the month ahead. Now,
Hmm.
obviously, if you're having something with an issue with an RA who's not doing their tasks or are not meeting expectations, that's a bit different because you're like,
Yeah.
okay, I want you to understand the role. So next month, when your new bulletin board is due, you're not already behind.
Hmm.
But I like to focus a bit more on what do they need in the moment and
Yeah.
then pushing them a little bit outside their comfort zone so they can improve.
Yeah. I think I'd agree with you too. And the full or the not full-time necessarily, but in-hall staff versus student staff and thinking about like differences in supervision for me in that the trust needs to be huge with full-time staff, but it also looks different with RI staff in that I work to create a space with the heads of hall that I oversee because I've mostly worked with graduate assistants, so they're also in class
Right.
while running buildings. So helping them balance that responsibility and helping them navigate that does look different than with an RA and that it is a different job. But also I think there is some overlap for me in navigating okay, what do you need from me? What do you envision this relationship looking like as far as supervision? What would support look like? What would guidance look like? Do you want to do it and I come in when you need me, or do you want me there more actively? And having that honest conversation, I think for me is where I go about building that trust and building that connection with the in-hall staff I'm working with because they're professionals. And to a point you're making, like we might get an RA for 3 years at most. I had a very rare fourth year RA this year, which was amazing. A little super senior moment, but I got to have him longer, which was lovely. Um, it's almost like pharmacy and the saxophone performance has no overlap, which meant that he was here a little bit longer.
Oh, I always,
No overlap, so he had a little bit longer on his degree.
yeah,
Um,
we all do that. I graduated a year and a half late with my
yep.
bachelor's.
It happens.
Happens. And honestly, and if you're listening to this and you're a current student, no one cares once you're out of
No one
college.
cares once you're out of college.
They care prove to me that you know what to do.
Exactly.
And I say that to every student, every RA that I can.
hmm For sure.
Um, and
But yeah,
kind of
those are my main differences for me, for sure.
yeah, and one thing kind of like adding to your piece of what does my staff need from me?
Yeah,
Being able to adjust your supervisory style is so
agreed.
important. Like I remember being asked constantly, like, "Oh, what's your supervisory style, Siobhàn?" I'm like, "Yes."
It changes depending on what we're talking about.
Yeah, I forgot to mention it when I mentioned that first one-on-one, but that's really it's like one of my things is what do you need? I
Yeah.
have RAs that are like, I'm hands off, I'll do my job, you tell me what to do, and I'm done. I don't need
Yep.
support. And then I have others who are in my office outside of their one-on-ones just because they need that bit more coaching. I had one RA that, you know, loved them to death. They were a fantastic RA, but did not have the confidence that they could do things on their own.
Yeah.
And it's almost, I got to the point where I almost had to like close my door and be like, no, training wheels are off. Go do it. And then once
hmm
they did, they're like, oh,
Oh, I do know what I'm doing.
yeah, after
hmm
2 years of being an RA, I can talk to my residents and
Yep.
uh, fantastic RA. Just it was more of those conflict issues of, hey, I know you've been the one trashing the bathroom, sort of
Yeah,
difficult. And it is really important to be open to trying supervisory styles that you might not necessarily enjoy.
for
Like I
sure.
personally hate micromanagement. I've
hmm
had RAs who want me on there constantly.
Yep.
I have
And that's
RAs.
been a challenge when that's happened to me too, because that's not a style I prescribe to. But this is making me remember an RA that I had that I focus very heavily on motivational interviewing and like asking questions. And I had an RA who was like, "Hey Noah, please don't tiptoe around it. Just tell me what you think." And I was like, I did not realize I was tiptoeing around anything. I was using motivational interviewing. Like, it sounds like this is what's going on. She's like, Noah, just tell me the thing, point blank, and I'll do the thing. And that was hard for
Mm.
me, I think, to adjust to that need. But how cool was it that she was telling me what she needed and telling me something I was doing wasn't working for her?
It's
She felt
almost like
comfortable to do that. Yeah, it's almost
almost
like
like
she trusted me. hmm Ah,
miracle.
it's so cool. It's so cool
Um,
when that happens. But I guess this is kind of getting us into my next question a little bit as well, and that you've kind of started talking about the accountability piece of everything. But how do you approach those accountability conversations with your student staff?
so one thing I would say to begin with, it's hard, and if you're the one in that position, acknowledge it to yourself that it's hard. Especially if you've had a RA in your office who's been telling you about their sick grandmother all semester,
Yep.
and they're not meeting expectations. It's hard and it feels awful because we do care about our students and we want
Yeah.
them to, trust us and to, you're not going to break trust by holding students accountable. And I
Correct.
think that's something I say to every person, like accept that it's going to be just uncomfortable and know that you can still keep the trust.
hmm
Um, one method that I hear and I personally hate is that sandwich method where you give them a
Yeah.
compliment, you tell them what's wrong, and then you give them a compliment because from my experience, and I've seen my professional staff doing this to students, it doesn't feel genuine. It feels
Hmm.
like I'm checking off a box, like I'm going to say you have great hair. Now I'm going to tell you about how rude you were to the resident last night during that incident. And then I'm going to tell you that I really love working with you.
Yep.
It doesn't feel real. So what I like to do is I try to do more, where's their strength and how can I use their strength to build up the
Yeah.
accountability if I'm trying to correct behavior or I'm trying to improve.
Hmm.
Um, I feel like I might go way too long with this quick example, quick in inverted commas. But I have an RA who, and again, my students are STEMs. He's an engineer. He does not do art at all.
Yeah.
His bulletin boards do not look great. He'll basically print out the word the, cut out a square, and put it on his board.
Hmm.
And part of it, he told me, he's like, he doesn't really understand visually how to map it all together.
Yeah.
This RA works in our 3D print lab on our campus, is has designed 3D prints for me for programming and for RA award stuff. So I went into him, I'm like, why don't you for your next board 3D printed? And he looked at me like, what, I can't 3D print a board. I'm like, no, make a slab of 3D on your software and put out the negatives of where you want to put things. And
Hmm.
for him, he said that suddenly worked as a visual because he was able to manipulate where things moved around on the square. Like he didn't
Hmm.
put all the details, those kind of scribbles for the more like specific office hours, but he was able to kind of do that.
Yeah.
And then he printed it and had it as like a note for his
For sure.
board. Still was not great, but
Hmm.
it was a lot better than his previous ones.
Yeah.
But going like maybe not necessarily in that approach, but for like accountability, if I had one RA who didn't attend our building closings and wasn't going to team meetings and wasn't doing his programming.
Hmm.
I just kind of came out and told him flat, I was like, I'm very disappointed with what
Hmm.
things are going on. You were a fantastic RA in the past. This is everything you've done great. I know that you have decided you're not going to return next year. However, you're still contracted through this semester, and I need you to kind of keep it up. And kind of going back to that student that you said to like, just tell me what it is.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do have to do that.
Hmm.
But then it was after that kind of conversation, it was, let's develop a plan.
Yeah.
Because they were at that point, that particular RA was debating, do I quit or do I finish out the semester? And I was like, it's up to you. I will
Hmm.
support you whichever way you choose, but note that I'm going to have specific expectations if you want to stay. They ended up deciding to stay, so we wrote out an action plan. We
Yeah.
put specifically of, you know, what expectations were. And again, I felt this was a little tedious on my end, and like I shouldn't have to explain to you what you need to do as an RA for your basic jobs. But in the moment, it was what this RA needed. They were
Hmm.
overwhelmed with their work and their classes, and this just kind of gave them something that they could put on their door. And it's almost like a check mark of, okay, I did my bulletin board for April, I did my bulletin board for May. I'm doing my programming for this. I'm going to be here for these meetings. And kind of also with the expectation of what would happen if he didn't go through.
Yeah.
And then each one-on-one, we did a bit more with Res Life related than I had previously because it was okay.
Hmm.
Let's look at your plan. Where are we at? How are we doing? What do you need? Um, was it perfect? I'm gonna say no. Like there were
Hmm.
definitely things that this RA missed, and at the point it was like it's finals week. My hands are tied. I can't fire an RA during finals week.
Yeah.
But my RAs, if they are not graduating, have an expectation to work commencement and to do senior move outs the day after
Hmm.
commencement. He showed up. He did not look like he wanted to be there, but he showed up to both. And I was like, you know what? That to
You
me is
met
a win.
expectation.
You met my expectation. Were you my best RA? No. Were the other RAs a little frustrated? Yes, but
Hmm. You met the expectation.
you met the expectation. And that's
Yeah.
at the moment all you can want, especially um, just also a bit of a warning if you have RAs that are graduating, senioritis hits hard.
In my
And
experience, it can. It definitely can.
you're going to have the RAs who are excelling their senior year, but
For
you're also
sure.
going to have RAs of like, ah,
Yeah.
and being able to kind of hold them to that
And
accountability,
it
especially
happens.
when you're like, you want me to be a reference for you, right? For after you
Hmm.
graduate,
Yeah.
you still need to meet my expectations. You still
Hmm.
need to, or yes, you have a job already lined up, but you still have to pass your classes to get your
Yeah.
degree.
Hmm. And
Um,
I love your answer so much, both in that it leads me perfectly into another story I want to tell, but also the it centers so heavily on what we've been talking about in listening to our staff and meeting them and their needs. Something that I do with every single one of my RAs is one of the questions I ask them at the start of the year is how do you prefer to receive feedback?
mhm,
How do you want to get feedback from me? Because I've had RAs who are like, I prefer feedback to be written. That's how I want to get it. That's how I would like to give it. That is not my preference. But them telling me that, okay, I'm like, okay, this is my staff member telling me this will be the best way for me to receive that. So then that builds trust if I meet them in that need. And it might be I prefer to receive it directly. It might be I prefer to get the compliment sandwich. I've had RAs say they want that.
mhm,
I don't like it. I might challenge that one a little bit because it does feel disingenuous to me. But I try to meet them in that need. I think about one of the first times I ever had to give feedback to an RA many years ago now. And he had told me very directly, he's like, I want to receive feedback in person, one on one, just tell me. And I began the conversation with, hey, like, I know you asked to receive feedback directly, and I have something that I want to talk about. Is now an okay time for us to talk? And I
mhm,
watched him sit up straight immediately, and he was like, yeah, let's do that. And then we had an honest conversation. And that day, he apologized to the staff member that he offended, and he never did it again. And it was a very important moment, I think, for me as a professional as well, because it solidified that for me in, okay, I'm going to talk to my staff about feedback all the time. Because one, I want to make that a normal part of their lives is, hey, we're talking about performance, we're talking about how you're doing, and I want you to tell me how I'm doing because I want to be the best possible supervisor for you and I want you to be the best possible RAs for your students. So let's talk about how we can do better because that builds that team dynamic, it builds that trust, and it makes it a two-way streak because it should never just be me holding them accountable. It should be everybody holding everybody accountable. Um, so I think for me, it really is having those conversations of, hey, what, how do you want this to look? And then trying our best to meet them in that. I've seen that be really successful for me in giving that accountability and holding them accountable. But I guess kind of to wrap us up, Siobhàn, we've already given a lot of advice to folks, but what might be the one thing if someone was going to listen or watch this and take one thing away from our conversation, what piece of advice would you give to a first-time supervisor?
absolutely. So I'm thinking back to also stuff that I got that really meant for me. And if you only listened for the last 5 minutes of this podcast, and or if there's only one thing I want you to take away from this, know that you have supports too. We've talked a lot
Yeah,
about supporting RAs. You have a team. You're not the only one who's going to be overseeing your entire campus, your entire institution. You have others.
for
And
sure.
it's just something like, a great example I've seen was I've had hall directors who are like, hey, their first year, I know you had Jessica last year as an RA. How is she? Like, what are sort of things she likes? And again, being able to do that in your first one-on-one, asking like, how do you like feedback? How do you
Hmm.
want us to, what do you want us to use these one-on-ones for? But being able to talk to your colleagues about, hey, I know you had this individual. What can I do? What's your recommendation for supporting the staff member?
Yeah,
If anything, also just be okay with not being perfect.
yeah.
It is, as a perfectionist, I get it. Like I got my first paper grade back this week and I got an A minus and I turned to my husband. I'm like, can you read the feedback? Because I'm terrified to read the feedback. I got a 93. How bad can the feedback be if I was terrified to read it?
Hmm.
know that it's okay not to be perfect. And again, kind of going back to that, we're the last people to ask for help.
Yeah.
Ask for help. It doesn't make you look weak. It makes you look really strong. And it's going to make you the best supervisor for your RAs, the best staff member for your students. It's going to help your RAs be the best for their students. Um, yeah. And also
Yeah.
just staying connected. I'm on a Facebook group called Res Life Professionals that I'm
Mhm.
able to ask questions either anonymously or publicly with my name. And that's helped me kind of overcome that fear of asking questions and just getting to know your expectations.
Yeah.
And I mean, I feel like I'm saying and, but make mistakes.
Yeah.
Mistakes are where learning happens. You're not going to learn if you're doing everything perfectly.
Hmm.
Make mistakes, own up to them, and move on. Same way
Hmm.
we would forgive an RA for making a mistake and coach them into how to not make the mistakes again.
Yeah.
Your supervisor is going to do the same thing. You're
Hmm.
allowed to make mistakes, grow from them.
Yeah. I would agree with every single one of those points, particularly that we're not alone in the supervision space. I actually did the exact same thing a couple days ago that I have, because I'm moving buildings currently to a new community, and I have a new RA coming to my staff that one of my supervisors called me and was like, "Hey, you might have looked at your new staff. It's different now. We had to make a couple changes. This new person is coming to your hall." And I was like, "Oh, okay. I'll call his old RD and check in with them and be like, hey, one, do you know anything about this move? And two, like, tell me about this person. Tell me about their work. Tell me about why you had hired them. Because and then I learned this RD had hired them, wanted to work with them, and then for reasons beyond her, some changes got made to some staffing structure because that happens sometimes. But she had nothing but good things to say about this human, and I would not have known that had I not utilized my community to have that conversation. Be like, hey, tell me about this person that I'm getting that I wasn't planning on getting. And that was unbelievably helpful. So remember that we're not alone. I think I would second that advice. But that just about wraps us up today, Siobhàn. Thank you again for joining me. I hope you had fun and
I
enjoyed
enjoyed
our
it.
conversation. And that wraps us up as well. So thank you all for joining us on today's episode of ResEd Chat. If, as always, you have an idea for a topic or a person you'd like us to have on the show, please let us know by reaching out to Roompact. And as always, keep taking care of one another and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye, folks.